Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Derek Main and I review translated literature. I started off the year with a lukewarm review and then a pretty negative review, so I'm pretty excited today to jump into something that I truly loved. And get back to celebrating literature, not complaining. So this is Ricardo Piglia's Target in the Night, translated from the Spanish by Sergio Waisman, and it is a Deep Vellum book. So this is a Argentinian noir, which I'll talk about in a second why that's so exciting to me. But one of the things that's really cool about the author, as I was looking him up, who has passed away, but the author was a famed literary critic. And there's that thing about every literary critic wants to write a novel, and including every booktuber and everything like that. And of course he did, and incredible. I don't know. I need to look, and I should have looked how many more he has. I'm not sure. I don't think it's a lot of them, but this is the one that I found translated into English. But anyway, he wrote this incredible Argentinian noir. So noir had, and I just think it's cool that he was literary critic, So noir has had a place in my reading heart for a very, very long time. I'm going to show you real quick some of my favorite classic ones. We're not going to see Raymond Chandler in here. He is one of my favorites. I think Farewell, My Lovely is probably my favorite. But I just don't have them on the bookshelf for some reason. I think I did all those through library. So I love David Goodis. Three of my favorites: Shoot the Piano Player, classic; Blonde on the Street Corner, classic; and then Night Squad. I love those three. I've got several more. I think I've read all of his. I've read all of Jim Thompson's, another one of my favorite. Very, very gritty. Pop 1280 is my favorite. Mickey Spillane, actually not my favorite, but I do love this one, Eye of the Jury. I'm not as into his Mike Hammer character, but this one, I think, which might have been the first, is great. Absolute classic. They Shoot Horses, Don't They? Horace McCoy. If you have not read this one and have any interest in noir, this is a must-read. I like John MacDonald, so this is more like what I call beach read, or sort of just kind of fun. I mean, all this, that's the thing about noir, right, is sometimes it can be literary fiction, and sometimes it can just be an awesome sort of escapist fun. And that's what the Travis McGee series is. This is, I think, is the first one, The Deep Blue Goodbye. Very cool. And then another one who I feel is not talked about as much, but I really like him as far as detective guy, is Charles Willeford. And this is his Miami, it's Hoke Mosley. There's a title for this series. It might just be called the Miami series. But anyway, all four really good. And then he wrote one of my all-time favorites. I don't know, noir, I think might be stretching it, but it's called Cockfighter. It's a great look into the Southeast Cockfighting Association. I mean, it's fiction, but it's just such a fascinating, weird subculture, and with the grittiness of a noir, and so I love that. So I have been into these for a really long time, and there's not a lot that I've seen translated from other languages, because I'm not really counting those Scandinavian thriller things, I don't remember the name, and it was the biggest book and movie of the world for a while, but dragon stuff, and then a bunch of other stuff came with it. Not that, I'm talking really sort of about the gritty noir. And my favorite type is the one that has something else. It's not just the plot and the action moves really fun, but there's a thematic quality underneath it. And that is absolutely what Target in the Night has done, because it is a noir, of course, and it follows so many of the great kind of classic steps, and as a reader, you're kind of on the edge of your seat. It's written tremendously, little breadcrumbs here and there, but not enough to spoil any big surprises. But underneath it is really a story about capitalism, particularly how capitalism affects rural areas. So there's a big rural city divide within it, and it's about sort of who owns wealth, who owns land, and it's a really, really good exploration of that. I love that. So literally, the day I finished this, I was listening to the 3% podcast, and one of the co-hosts Tom Roberge, who's the co-owner of Riff Raff Books and Bar in Providence, Rhode Island, apparently had written an article about this French noir writer I'd never heard of, Jean-Patrick Manchette. And he kind of said the same thing, that there wasn't a lot of noir in translation, and this was a noir that dealt with a lot of political issues. So this was the one, 3 to Kill, that he suggested I start with. So I ordered it from my local bookstore, picked it up, and I'm really, really excited to get into that. So that was kind of like serendipity, like really cool. There was somebody else out there thinking about this stuff, and now it gives me somebody new to read. And in his case, there's quite a few, which is really cool. So hopefully that's awesome, and we'll get a review of that at some point. So let's start with this. It is not, with noirs, it's so important, the plot, that it's hard to kind of like retrace it all without giving away stuff. So like really briefly, we're in a rural setting of Argentina, a rural area, and someone, I believe he's Puerto Rican, but he comes from New York in America, comes down with a lot of money, a big pile of cash, and lots of rumors about him. Of course, it's a small town, so like there is all kinds of insinuations and misdirection, and they're all just kind of clamoring over, what is this person here for? Ostensibly, he's there for some like horse purchases and stuff. It's kind of weird. There's like a jockey scene, basically, right? And so he's murdered. Okay, so that's the story, and we've got the classic detective who is misunderstood, calculating, brilliant, but kind of coming from an eccentric mindset. We've got the Belladonna twins, these two sisters who are beautiful, striking, possibly dangerous, that kind of take on the role of, at least in the beginning, you think of like the femme fatale, but this book is too smart, too clever to like get into those cliches. It kind of gives a nod to them in a literary sense, but then it's going to smash up so many of those things. There is the very rich, the father of those two sisters is the one really, really rich man in town. He's isolated in his mansion, and then he's also got two sons who are fighting over this factory that hasn't produced in a long time. Within this factory, there is a outsider group that wants to come buy it and build up a big development, and there we get some of that capitalism and rural city. So those are the elements of the story. And there's not much more you can really get into the plot, I don't think, without spoiling much of it. But if you like noirs and if you like those sort of like mysteries, this is great. And the fact that underneath it you're going to get a real tale of, well, let me give you an example. So page 186, I've highlighted something that I think is really, it's a little speech, a couple sentences this guy gives you a taste of the thematic stuff underneath. There are no values left, only prices. The state is an insatiable predator. It pursues us with its confiscatory taxes. For those of us, for me I should say, who live in the country, away from the chaos, life is harder all the time. We're surrounded by large floods, by large taxes, by new commercial roads. So that's a great example of that push and pull that you're going to see from the city and the rural. And one of the things this novel does really well, it kind of brings in midway through, maybe a quarter of the way through, a reporter from Buenos Aires, from a large paper, who's going to report on this murder. And so we're going to see through his sort of city eyes this look into rural life, and that's really great. So another thing about the writing of the book, he kind of notes that on 133. This is just a character talking about another character. But he says, Hilario, like any good storyteller, left blanks and didn't spell out the connections. So he does a couple things in there where he sort of points at what he's doing, and that is obviously a good example. Like, there are blanks in here. The connections are not spelled out. I'm saving these two parts on reading because I said he was a literary critic, and he's got two excellent sections on reading that speak to me. But I'm going to go towards 237. There's always a cynicism and a fatalism, a nihilism as well, in all these isms in noir. And this one right here, this couple of sentences, I think really sums up the ethos of a lot of noir, and particularly some of the characters in this. You can't live without making enemies. You'd have to lock yourself in a room and never leave, not move, not do anything. Everything is always more stupid and more incomprehensible than what one can deduce. So I love that. Everything is always more stupid and incomprehensible than one can deduce. You cannot live in this world in 2020 as we come up to an election year and we have, just a absolute shit show politically across the world and not see that everything is more stupid and incomprehensible than one can deduce. I really liked that. So I'll step away from the thematic stuff to just briefly on the reading. So there's on page 177 one of the best examples of somebody talking in a way that explains why I love translated literature. So Sophia, one of the twins, is being asked, what her mother reads. Novels, Sophia said. They arrive in large packages every month. My mother orders them on the telephone. She always reads everything by a writer she's interested in. Everything by Giorgio Bassani, all Jane Austen, all Henry James, all Edith Wharton, all Jean Guiano, all Carson McCullers, all Ivy Compton Burnett, all David Goodis, all Aldous Huxley, all Alberto Moravia, all Thomas Mann, all Gaudos. But she never reads novels by Argentine writers. She says those stories she already knows. I mean, I don't know every story being told in America. Obviously, there are millions of them, and everyone has a multitude of stories within them. But that really speaks to what I think it is I get out of translated literature. I don't want to read those stories. I already know those stories, kind of thing. And I love how, she says she already knows those stories, so nothing but that was just it's great. It literally was exactly for me. And then we're gonna have some beautiful prose on reading on page 222. There's a couple characters in here where reading is really important. Literature kind of comes up, and he's a literary critic, so it's really cool to see how he attacks that kind of thing. And this is again Sophia talking about her mother. I think this paragraph might be my favorite paragraph on reading I've ever read, and something that sings to me as totally true. I actually think after I read it, I probably don't have much of a comment. My mother says that reading is thinking, Sophia said. Not that we read and then we think, but rather that we think something, and then we read it in a book as if it were written by us, although it's not written by us. Rather, someone in another country, in another place, in the past, writes it like a thought that hasn't been thought yet, until by chance, always by chance, we find the book that clearly expresses what had been confusingly not yet thought by us. Not every book, of course, but certain books are destined for us. Certain books seem like objects of our own thoughts, a book for each one of us. I love that. Yeah, I think that's a good way to end this review, because that is such a beautiful ode to books that I 100% attest to as a reader and someone that just eats this stuff up. So a big hearty recommendation for Ricardo Piglia's Target in the Night. Again, translated from the Spanish by Sergio Waisman. Deep Vellum books. Deep Vellum, again, with another awesome one. If you have any more translated authors that do great noir, put them in the comments. I would love to read them. I'm next. Well, first I'll say, so when I went to pick up that Manchette, The Three to Kill, at my local bookstore, I got two really exciting, awesome books. The first is Die My Love by Ariana Harwitz, translated by Sarah Moses and Carolina Orloff, and it is a Charco Press title, so of course the cover is beautiful, and it's just a great collection. But look at this. It's called Die My Love. The front has a Guardian quote that says, "A touch of David Lynch," and it's put out by Charco Press. Sometimes I feel like people are spying on me. And then the other one that I got was The Wind That Lays Waste by Silva Almada, translated from the Spanish by Chris Andrews. This is a Grey Wolf Press book. Actually, oddly, now that I said that, I think Charco put this out for the European version. But this one is the Grey Wolf Press version. Really excited about this. I had seen a lot of buzz about that. Although I know Charco very well, I hadn't actually heard a lot about this. So, everything about this screams to me. So that's a good bookstore day, right? That's awesome. But my next review is going to be A woman I have never read before, and that was kind of embarrassing. A friend gave me this. One of my best friends gave me this book for Christmas, and it is The Hour of the Star by Clarice Lispector, a new translation by Benjamin Moser, and this is New Directions. Obviously, it's a major figure in literary fiction, especially translated fiction, Clarice Lispector. So you'll get my thoughts on this, so the first one of hers that I read next. Thanks, everybody, for listening. You can like, subscribe. What else can you do? You can talk to me on Twitter. All my stuff's down there. Comment, some noirs would be awesome, especially translated fiction. Thanks, folks. Be good.